Yes, Mr. Chibuike Mgbeahurike, the election consultant of Center for Democracy and Development, West Africa, joins us now via Zoom to discuss the Anambra State Guber elections. You're welcome. Good morning. Can you please unmute your microphone? We can't hear you from here.
Yeah, good morning. I'm happy to be here with you.
Thank you for joining us. Now,
Yeah.
from your vantage point, how would you describe the general mood among the voters in Anambra State and also the atmosphere as Anambra heads to the polls? How would you describe it?
Well, I mean, yeah, from what we've seen so far, of course, we've been going back and forth, visiting and coming out of the state. Well, I think with the interventions and the interactions we've done so far, I think the people are ready to make a difference. They are ready to build on the efforts of the past because Anambra is noted for poor voter turnout, and each time we see this kind of preparatory reactions, it is never enough for us until we get to the point where people will actually take steps to come and cast their votes. So it's a different ballgame to prepare the people, sensitize the people, and then for them to show good expectation and willingness to participate. But it's also a different ballgame to actually take that personal step on election day to come and vote. So generally speaking, they have expressed willingness. They are willing to make the change by casting their votes. They are in high spirits. They are responding with in line with the activities of civil society and other stakeholders who it is their responsibility to actually sensitize the people of Anambra State. So I would think they are ready.
Note, how would you assess elections in Nigeria, not just Anambra State? What is your assessment? But apart from that, what is your assessment of the candidates, their campaign, their manifestos presently?
Okay, talking about election generally in Nigeria, of course, your guest here is at mine. I think I have the privilege of seeing elections in Nigeria since 1999. And well, I can say for sure that as most people usually say it, I'm an election observer. My responses to that will be different from the general, reaction of other people. But from what I've seen over time, um, you know, the people are always willing. Our population is high. There have been times in the past we recorded over 93 million people, registering to vote. At some point, we've done that. But at the end of the day, those that will actually determine who governs them, the numbers seem to be poor each time. So, like, that's what I mean by it's a different ballgame to do the best you can do to get people ready to cast their votes. And then on election day, people make choices, take decisions in the comfort of their rooms, and they will not never come to cast a vote. But the truth is that you cannot assess election in Nigeria without focusing essentially on the electoral commission, who over time we've seen them, it's been an undulating kind of performance. There's some low, high, medium sort of. It is never consistent, but I know that on Anambra, we've had opportunity to relate very closely to with the rec, and we've continued to interact with her. She's been very open-minded and been very, willing to listen to people to make the required amendment that will ensure that our election in Anambra State is considered very credible, very fair, and a level playing field guaranteed for every stakeholder. Nigeria election, to discuss it now, to take a whole lot. There are a lot of indices to to look at if you want to assess Nigerian election. Like I said, we have the Electoral Commission, we have the security personnel, we have civil society, we have the media, we have the women, we have youths. We have different stakeholders that bring together their efforts that synergize to ensure our elections are free and fair. But at the end of the day, our reports have not always been consistently positive. You know, we assess it in its merit by assessing the Electoral Commission differently, assessing the performance of security people differently. At the end of the day, you see that some are doing well, some are not doing very well. You know, some need to improve and all of that. But cumulatively, it has not been, it's less than 60%, if you ask me, of Nigerian election performance since inception.
But beyond that, you're yet to answer your opinion on the candidates, the political parties, and their manifestos.
Okay. Okay. So, yeah, the candidates. Usually we do a pre-election analysis, and we also produce a background paper for Anambra in this case. We also produce information assessment for the Anambra election. So from what we have, of course, we know that we have about 16 political parties. We also have the front runners. You know, we know the incumbency is also, the incumbent governor is also on the ballot. You know, so the issue is all of them have their chances. I've observed their campaigns. Not all the political parties are enabled to do requisite preparatory campaigns towards this election. I cannot tell you that all the political parties that are on the ballot have doing their utmost best in terms of campaigning. And campaigning takes a lot more. You know, it's more of media, you know, engagements, going to the nooks and crannies of the over 21 local governments, 21 local governments that make up Anambra State. And it is something that takes a lot of resources, a lot of resilience for them to do. And but having said that, I wouldn't say this candidate has more chance than the other candidate, but I think there's a level playing field for each and every one of them to express their willingness to govern Anambra State and canvass votes from the people. And then, if you do the right thing, have the right messages, and reach and go across the 21 local governments, speak to people, you know, do your bits. I think you have they have all the chances in the world to be heard by the people and to be favored by the people. But as an independent observer, I can only say that the equal opportunities, equal chances for each and every one of them. You know, but I know that some candidates more enabling, more enabled in terms of resources and in terms of opportunities than some other ones. And that is always how it is in election day. You cannot have all the candidates, you know, showing evidence, equal evidences of all the indicators we look at. You know, some will be much better in one area, some will be less in other areas. And that's how it is. So each and every one will have equal chances to carry the day. But we look more on the side of the people who we want them, want a popular outcome for this election. And what makes election to be popular is, you know, participation, inclusiveness. Let everybody come out to vote once you are over 18, once you are registered, once you have your permanent voter's card, you can always come and vote. We don't want a situation. The sensitization we did with Anambra people is we're pleading with them that at least let us, out of the 2.8 million people that are supposed to vote in this election, can we even expect 1 million people to vote so that we can regard it as a popular outcome? And that's where our concerns are more largely.
Now, Mr. Mgbeahurike, Mgbeahurike, you are the election consultant of Center for Democracy and Development. Tell us about CDD and the role that the organization is playing, particularly in this Anambra State election.
Okay, yeah. So CDD, as you know, is policy and research-based think tank. We've been doing this work since 1998. We observed general elections. For Anambra particularly, we have done quite a bit. There are different components of intervention. First of all, we're going to deploy as much as 193 observers across the 21 local governments. Among this number, we're also going to deploy some mandate protection observers, which is a bit different from the regular observation. We're also going to monitor disinformation and hate speech in the system, which we have been doing ahead of the election. So CDD have doing tremendously well. Over the last few weeks, we've been everywhere in Anambra State, and our presence was very, widespread and very reported across. So this election have made us a household name in Anambra State because we've been going, to and from Anambra, and our advance team are already there since 2nd of November. The last team will leave on Thursday to Anambra. So during this period, we have interfaced with all the stakeholders. We interfaced with the stakeholders. We interfaced with the Electoral Commission, that is the INEC in Anambra State and the REC. We have also interfaced with the Interagency Committee on Election Security. We also interfaced with civil society, the media. We've done just a lot to make sure that this election is inclusive, that every stakeholder does what is required of them as allowed by the Constitution, so that at the end of the day, the people will be happy with the outcome. All the onlookers, we that are observers, will be happy with the outcome. We have not left any stone unturned. We continue to observe the process. We continue to engage the people. Particularly, let me tell you a little bit about the mandate protection I talked about. And that was why we interfaced the Interagency Committee on Electoral, Security, Election Security. The idea of the mandate protection is, of course, as you know, it is not just about observing the election and reporting later. It is about ensuring that if you see any infraction in the election field, you will have the opportunity to actually call the attention of the security agencies or other stakeholders that are in a position to respond or intervene. For instance, if we observe transactions in the system or in the polling units, we have engaged the EFCC and the ICPC, for instance, that are members of the Interagency Committee on Electoral Security. We reach out to them, say, look, there are infractions, there are transactions going on in this part of the electoral landscape that they needed to respond to. That is the much we have done, building that partnership to make sure that when we see these things happening, it is not just about reporting it when you leave the scene, but it's like calling attention to those responsible for them to do something while it is happening. So that's mandate protection for you. Then disinformation, as you know, even prior to this election, you would have seen as a media platform, you would have seen that people are bringing in a lot of personal issues in the matter. We continue to preach about issues, campaign on issues, not about personalities. People are beginning to introduce, criticizing people, running down, persons and all of that. That is not what we expect. We expect people to tell the people what they want to do for them. Why must they choose you over another candidate? And those are about issues. It's not about individuals or personalities. But we have seen a lot of lies and people churning out fake news and all of that. And CDD is also have a strong component of fact checking. They fact check issues and messages that come, especially those that have a motive of causing disaffection in the system. We promptly fact check them and counter those misinformation push them back. We've had the opportunity to also talk with the media in Anambra State to discuss more on this information and the ravages it does in the electoral landscape. We do not want to see it, but of course it has happened. There's no how it will not happen. So what they're doing is to make sure they promptly push back on those hate speech and fake news that ravage the system to inform the public appropriately and properly. So that's what we've been doing. Done so much about it, and we'll continue to do until the election is over. Of course, we have a electoral analysis center in Anambra State that will be located in Regina Cheli Road in Oka. And that's where our situation room will be located. We'll be working with these observers that are on the field. We'll be connecting with them. They'll be feeding us through our instruments, our information gathering instruments, which we have trained them to use. And so those information that are coming in out of the field is what our election analysis team will be, analyzing in such a way that at the end of the day, we'll be feeding the Anambra public, accordingly with requisite information, legitimate information that are coming out of our observations. So suffice it to say that we have an election team in our situation room, and we have connectivity with the election observers on the field. They'll be feeding into our system. We'll be verifying and analyzing what they are sending. And we have these observers, all the components. We have them in the senatorial district. We have them in local government level. We have them, all across. We also have those who will focus essentially on the ward collection centers. Our experience has showed that when we finish our observation at the polling units, we focus less on the ward collection centers, and that's where politicians are now focusing, because they are also re-strategizing in the same manner we are re-strategizing to have clean elections. They are also re-strategizing to cause disaffection in our elections. So ward collection centers, which is spread across 326 wards in Anambra State, we are unable to deploy across board, but we have selectively deployed to very critical areas. And some of the indices we look at is, and that also informed our observation methodology. We focus on local governments that have flashpoints, because the background paper we produce, which is in the public domain now, will tell us early enough that where the flashpoints are. We also know there are local government. These politicians belong to certain local governments. Some of them will vote in certain polling units. Some have a history of violence. I'm talking of local governments. Some have large followings. These are indices we look at to also inform the way we deploy observers, so that at the end of the day, we'll have better results.
Now, beyond the roles of the CDD in the election of Anambra State, now we are aware that CDD has actually conducted a lot of research and reports. Now, we'd like you to highlight on the findings, what areas the CDD focused on, what is the content of this research, and how does it affect governance and democracy in Nigeria?
Okay, so what we looked at is, like I said, we interacted with the Anambra public. We also listened to them. We don't just analyze in a vacuum. We interact with the people. So our background paper, as bulky as it is over 70 pages. A lot of things was discussed. We looked at the candidates, looked at political parties. We looked at the implications of the landscape itself, the enlightened, populace, and the influence of businesses in Anambra State. We also looked at zoning, and the place of religiosity in the whole, situation. We know that there are different, colorations of religion in Anambra State. Each of them bring a lot of influence in the system. These people, these candidates have affiliations. We look at all of that. We look at the place of, like I said, the place of identity. We look at the place of personalities. There's some personalities that make more impact than others and what they bring to bear. And we also look at the networks, they have. We also look at the, the influence of the national politics and the Anambra election. We also looked at the utterances of candidates and their followers. We look at incumbency factors, which is also very critical. Multiple factors that we looked at, which we analyzed in this report. And this report is being, distributed accordingly. We will have a way. I think I will send you guys the soft copy of both documents, both the information assessment and the background paper. So a lot of things, all of these things I mentioned and much more informed the position we're taking. For instance, we also looked at different senatorial districts that have some flashpoints. We also looked at the fact that there are unconventional security arrangements in Anambra State, which of course we have been told, and it is now clear that the unconventional security outfits will not feature in this election, which is also okay. Our interaction with the people revealed that they will constitute some kind of challenges in the system. We also have some opinions, strong opinions that why it is not expected that they should be used in the polling units, they can also be used in remote areas where the bad people can also, do their stock and trade. So I think we saw a lot of things in the landscape, and all of these are contained in now this report, which I will eventually share with you. But I cannot speak on a document that is of up to 70 pages. There's so much, it's very, very rich. And the best to do is to allow you access to it so that you scrutinize it and report more on it.
All right. Now, you are focused on Anambra State election, but beyond Anambra State election, what findings or reports, what does your research say about elections, governance, and democracy in Nigeria?
Okay, so you quickly taking me back to the last election, general election, 2023 election, which the CDD report was very revealing. In fact, we dwelt on what we call six eyes, and I hope I'll remember most of them. We have information, how information played a lot of role in that 2023 election. We would have intra-party politics, intra-party bickerings, how it's also played part in that election. We also have identity. Identity, if you remember very well, that 2023 election, there was a lot of stuff that happened in Lagos, if you still remember, and some other places. Then institutions, which includes the electoral body, the security people, different stakeholders, that participated in that election, the judiciary. These are agencies, the integrity organizations. These are agencies that made the election what it was. Institutions. We also have infrastructure. Of course, you know that INEC introduced some technology. To what extent those infrastructure helped us or failed us, it caused a lot of disaffection in that election too. So about 6 eyes. I don't know if I mentioned all the institutional infrastructure, identity, inter-party politics, and information. Yeah, information disorder. So our focus on that election was basically on this area that I mentioned, who are very, very critical, very very unique way of approaching a general election. And if you can remember, all of these things I mentioned were the reason the election became what it was. You understand? So we analyzed all of those areas in depth, and we produced a report on it. That report, I can only describe it as a bestseller, but that is general elections for you. It is much more because of the fact that we have 36 states and Abuja. We have 774 local government, areas where these elections happen. We also know that logistics is a serious matter for the Electoral Commission. We also noted that INEC is not alone in determining the outcome of election, because a lot of stakeholders play a lot of roles. If you agree with me, now INEC to engage ad hoc staffs which are not immediately under their supervision per se. Also know that they engage road transport workers to ease logistics. All of these people who have been made we get involved in our elections do a lot of things that INEC may not even know. So we're beginning to see that while INEC has their own challenges, and which we appreciate as civil society, and we're always willing to assist. In fact, all the recommendations we do, we share it across stakeholders. We don't model it up. We say for the security outfits, these are areas you faltered, and this is areas can improve. You understand? And for INEC, we get a multiple recommendation. This is what we do. The concern with CDD is we expect the Electoral Commission after each election to reconvene, interface these people who observe election every now and then, to look critically at what failed and what worked, and be prepared to make amends. It is not enough that you do the election, conducting election anywhere is challenging. It's cost intensive, but it's something we must take very seriously. We also know that CDD also thinks that appointment principle for electoral commission and all the critical agencies should be very transparent and in line with the constitutional, requirements. For instance, CDD holds very dear the 208 electoral reform report that was produced under Uwais. That report has everything we needed to conduct very clean elections in Nigeria. For instance, because we see every aspect, we can tell you clearly that if we fail in appointing the IG of police properly, it will have some repercussion in our election. If we fail to sanitize the judiciary, it will have repercussions on our elections, and we are seeing all of that. If we also fail to appoint the guy in charge of the Electoral Commission properly, and accordingly, people with principles, it also have a tendency to affect our elections. And then every stakeholder have a role to play. And we acknowledge that the Electoral Commission is not alone. The REX, there are people we call the REX in INEC, they are independent, they work in the states. They are part of the Electoral Commission. They are very powerful and very instrumental in what happens in INEC. And we have retinue of a strong workforce in INEC with different kinds of human beings. We don't know how they act on elections and all of that. So there's so many things to sanitize. And CDD each time, this last election, our report was very rich. We touched on every aspect of this thing. And recently, we also did a review. I mean, we revisited the WES report, picked out the aspect that talked about appointment principles and the models suggested for these appointments. For instance, we thought that the South African model, which expect willing people to apply for the INEC job, INEC chairman's job. That means there's a vacancy in INEC for the highest position, and you make it open for people to apply, and they go through the normal routines, to be considered for that position. We also do another one, which is civil society and other stakeholders will present three names to the president, because we know the president has prerogative too, so that among the three he can choose who becomes the head of INEC. And anyone he decides to choose, Nigerians will be happy because civil society involvement was very in-depth. So that general election in Nigeria is a big issue. You see how expensive it is. And we don't want to be going the route that each expensive election will leave us wondering what has happened to us. Our election is supposed to produce a very good outcome where
Of
people,
course.
all the players and actors will be happy, they were part of it.
All right.
But I have to
Mr.
say that
Mgbeahurike,
it
I'll
is,
just
yeah,
I want to ask you. Now, you mentioned earlier that your reports and your research, you share them with the relevant stakeholders to point out the areas
sorry, I
where
didn't get
they
that.
were lacking and needs improvement for the next time. Now, I want to ask,
Yeah.
how has the response been from these stakeholders involved when you share this information with them? How has it been received? And would you say that over the years, and the research and the reports you've done, would you say you've seen any significant improvement, with all the areas that you have pointed out so far that have been lacking?
Okay, so like I mentioned, when we recommend specifically, targeting certain stakeholders. For instance, in this report, we have a number of recommendations for the Electoral Commission. We have a number of recommendations for each stakeholders. Yes, for the Electoral Commission, I can tell you that there has been some new introductions into our electoral system. And you also remember that recently, just before the last INEC chair left office, the INEC has actually, pushing for a lot of reforms, and expecting some tinkering to happen to our constitution. Of course, the constitutional amendment was still going on before he left. So to that extent, I can say that they've taken some steps to do something, and even some of the technology we are using today, Beavers and the IREC, these are function of suggestions and recommendations by civil society and CDD, as a matter of fact. But you know that they are also not alone. For you to introduce some of these innovations, we also have the National Assembly to contend with. And I tell you that that is a more difficult area to have a free ride. But of course, we're building partnership along with other civil societies to ensure that some of these recommendations that require constitutional tinkering, see the light of the day. It's not been easy. But I tell you, the areas we have not been seeing improvement is on the part of the actors themselves, the politicians. The politicians. We recommend that they should you know, play down on violence, you know, play down on introducing too much money in our elections and in politics, vote buying and vote, trading. These are infractions that emanate from politicians who want to, win by all means. We also have recommendations for people, for the electorate, some of whom are also willing to accept these things, sell their votes for peanuts. If you are willing to buy vote, you should also be willing to sell. So we recommend all of those things, but I tell you, we are still seeing those things happening. You know, some are doing well, some are not doing well, some need to improve. But even in logistics, which is a major concern on each election, right now we know that there's no how they can do away with ad hoc staffs, regardless of some of the things we see from time to time. And that is because they need a lot of personnel to execute these things, especially in general elections. They can't easily leave out road transport workers, for instance, because they need to transport these materials across, which is also But the real issue there is not that we are engaging in this priority areas. The actual problem is the human side of it. People can actually conduct themselves, responsibly, patriotically, to make sure we deliver on the promises of conducting good elections. But a lot of people who are in sensitive positions are.
All right, it seems we lost Chibuike Mgbeahurike due to glitches, but this is where we round up that conversation on Anambra State Guber election, the facts and fictions. Now, a very big thank you for staying with us so far.
Yes, a very big thank you to you for staying with us, and a very big thank you to our guests for joining us in that conversation. And we've come to the end of the show this morning. It's a pleasure to have you join us. I am Uchenna Chimdi Oluoha.
And I am Lilian Wali.
Save Nature TV, news in your pocket.